that's happened in any shock situation, train crash, earthquake, whatever it might be, there seem to be, I think, two effects on people. On the one hand, they become lethargic and can't be bothered to help themselves, and on the other hand, their judgment is impaired. Their vision appears to narrow. And I believe, it interested me at the time when I became aware of it, in the middle of this time in the Falklands, that I was not personally prepared for that. No doubt my own fault, but it had been there to see. I don't think anybody had ever brought it to my notice, but I do believe that we can manage it. Now it's more out into the open.
The essential difference between military psychiatry and psychiatry in the community, which is caught up with a civilian disaster, is that, in principle at least, the military has a structure that can immediately be swung into action to assist in the assessment of the scale of the disaster and mobilize the appropriate resources. Now, this may not actually be possible following on a disaster in the civilian setting for a variety of reasons, but I really do believe that perhaps it is one of the things that we should be working towards, is passing the responsibility to each community to decide whether or not they wish to prepare for the disaster, and that is the first stage, a willingness to recognize that there is a need to prepare. And having established this recognition, then in the matter of psychiatry and psychological reactions, the willingness to recognize that there will be psychological casualties, and that if they aren't actually recognized, then we've missed them, and we must have some way or other to go back to the scene and identify where they are.
Aberfan will be remembered not only for the lost generation entombed by the moving mountain. It'll be remembered as a fearful lesson for the future. It will also be remembered for the almost superhuman response that engineered a vast army of volunteers to work without rest or pause day and night in a frantic rescue attempt. But as the hours passed, so did hope for the remaining children and teachers.
Quite rightly, in the immediate aftermath of a disaster, the priority is towards preserving life and limb. And I think this is one of the things we need to make clear from the very beginning, that the psychiatric, psychological welfare support services mustn't get in the way of the immediate response, which is that of containing the disaster and preserving life and limb. However, at an early stage, the involvement of psychological services will enhance the credibility of their subsequent involvement in dealing with the aftermath, and also allow them to identify those people who might well be overlooked, groups that might be overlooked, such as rescuers or bystanders or the walking wounded. And when you begin to look at those figures and cast the net wide enough, well, then you can certainly talk in the order of, at some stage or other following on the disaster, 75% of people who've been involved in one way or another are going to be showing a significant reaction. And as the time progresses on, that figure might well reduce, and indeed we would like to think that generally it reduces, and you're left with a residual figure in the order of about 20 to 25% of people who've been caught up in the disaster needing more formal assessment and support. And that assessment and support might amount to just a one-off debriefing session in a group situation, and indeed preferably in a group situation. It's all quite simple, we believe, and the important thing is to keep it simple. And we emphasize the need to prepare and the willingness to recognize that there will be psychological casualties following on a disaster, and that for the most part they can be recognized and can be managed without the deployment of very significant resources. But the job satisfaction and the sense of the community responding appropriately is very hard to describe, but it is certainly very rewarding.